All right, first podcast of 2023. Cole Chaney, huge fans. What's up, man?
What's going on, y'all?
Want to quickly ask you about some. We had some fan questions we'll get to, but the success of your only album so far, Mercy, which has done incredibly well on Spotify and streaming, and got a ton of buzz for you. Awesome album. I was actually looking at it and comparing the numbers. We've talked about this before, comparing some of the numbers, even on the deep cuts, some of the stuff that maybe wasn't catching as much of fire, but still getting crazy listens on the whole album. You got major label people in Nashville that don't get close to these type of numbers. And do you pay attention to that? Or do you just let it take care of itself? Because we love seeing this. We've seen it with Charles Wesley Godwin. We've seen it with you. We see it with others. And it's always like kind of funny thing to me because we feel like the major label Nashville bubble kind of they don't kind of go out and notice these things. But do you pay attention to it or not really?
I mean, I'd be lying if I said that, I didn't keep an eye on that stuff because certainly, you want to be doing well on numbers and stuff. But honestly, man, I don't really, I don't put that much worth into my numbers per se, because fact of the matter is that those can be bought and people buy them all the time. They buy listeners, they buy followers and all that stuff. So, yeah, it's cool. And I do keep up with that stuff, but I guess I try to kind of leave that up to folks like you to watch because, I try to just kind of stay eyes forward with the whole thing.
Yeah, it's kind of got that underdog feel, which I love, but the music's better.
Is that something too? Like, I feel like my metric is always like, can you put asses in the seats or not? And then you'll see like an artist who, has maybe got some radio play, but like still doesn't quite have that audience they've built because they haven't spent that time on the road yet. Is that something that you're focused on as far as like, I want to play shows, I want to grow fans, and I want to kind of earn them the right way, earn them fan by fan, show by show? And do you think that's something that plays out in the long run versus maybe having a quick radio hit on pop country radio?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna necessarily say that there's a right or a wrong way to do this thing. I think that it happens the way it happens for everybody. And, I'm not gonna say that if you have a song that blows up or you go, you're a viral sensation on the internet, then absolutely, if I was that person, I would take that and run with it, for sure. But, I do have a little bit of a different approach to this whole thing than I think that a lot of people do. My whole thing is I've never wanted to be somebody that got cast in the spotlight before I was ready to be there. You know what I mean? Like I want to be prepared for the situation that I get thrown into. So, that's why I'm not like ever in a big hurry to get where I'm going, as opposed to just marinating and trying to improve as a songwriter or a musician, or, just enjoy where I'm at.
You're what, 21, 22? How old are you?
I'm 22, going on 23.
I mean, you got fucking time, man. Right? It's like it's crazy to me when you listen to your music too. It's there's obviously artists that kind of reminds you of, but well past your years in terms of the content of the music or the context of it. But how did that all come about for you? Because I saw on your Instagram, obviously you're a young guy and you had some pics up from it looked like high school graduation or something. Was there any draw or desire to go to like college and do it normally and then continue the music thing, or was it just like, no, I'm doing this music thing, that's only thing on my mind right out of high school?
Well, I probably would have gone to college if I would have had the grades to go to college. But that was not a possibility. Now I went to a welding school right out of high school, and at the time there was I mean, it was cool to fantasize about like, being a musician, whatever, but that was kind of something that was just far off for me. And it wasn't really a realistic option. I wasn't considering it. in a real way. So I went and I did the whole welding thing and stuff. And, life has a way of putting the metaphorical gutter guards up for you sometimes. And welding kind of, I loved it while I was doing it, but what the welding itself wasn't what drove me away from it. It was the hours that I was pulling, and being like wearing myself out like that for somebody that's I'm earning a dime to their dollar. So I just didn't really jive with that whole thing. So when I got back home, I tried to go back out and do it again, but man, my heart just was not in it. And I went out and failed a weld test. And that was kind of when I decided that I wasn't going to do that. I didn't know what I was going to do, but music kind of found me in a way. It just kind of, there was not a certain point where I think that I made a real choice to drop everything and pursue this fully until I moved to Lexington, Kentucky, which was like a year after I quit welding. So there's a good point in time there where I didn't really know what I was going to be doing, but I was just kind of writing songs and stuff like that, just for the hell of it.
Did you grow up in a musical family?
Not really, no. A lot of music enthusiasts for sure, but there's my grandmother, she plays the piano in church, and my stepdad, he always played guitar and just kind of messed around with it, but he wasn't very serious about it. So, I was, but I will say this, my papa's sisters, my great aunts, they had a gospel group back in the day called the Gospelaires, and they were a trio that toured around and they sang gospel songs. So I guess in some way, yeah, I did come from a musical family, but I wasn't around for any of that.
Who was the obviously you got an incredible voice and songwriting and all that, but who was the first person just be like, oh shit, you're good, like you can do this?
Honestly, outside of my family and my direct friends, there was an open mic that I used to play all the time back before COVID came around and shut all that down. And the place was called Callahan's, and it was in the Kiowa Mall, and I guess that would be Cannonsburg. The address probably says Ashland on it, but that, to me, that's Cannonsburg. But that's that's my hometown. But I would go down there every Wednesday and play their open mic. And the host of that open mic, his name is Rick Potter. He doesn't do that anymore there because Callahan's got shut down because of COVID. But he was one of the first people to really take notice and be like, man, you really got something. And, he just was one of the first people to believe in me. And that kind of really helped me with my confidence and writing and things like that. And there was also another guy that would always come down there to Callahan's, and he was just an enthusiast. He wasn't an artist. He wasn't a host or anything like that. He just showed up every week. And he actually runs the Friends of Cole fan page on Facebook, and his name is Kevin Robinette. So those two are definitely like day ones for sure.
Nice.
Does he run the Twitter account too? The Friends of
No,
Cole?
that's another thing.
Oh, because you had a Twitter briefly, right? Or
yeah, I had a Twitter just long enough to lose my shit on there one time, and I was like, no,
you're not missing much. We have to use it for for our stories and links and playlists and stuff, of course, but it's a cesspool.
it's a wild
Twitter.
Yeah, the temptation was just too great. I couldn't stand it.
Oh, that's funny.
Did you
we'll
go ahead?
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, when you were first kind of starting out and playing shows, did you ever have one where you just ate shit, you just bombed, and you were like,
Oh yeah,
that was
plenty
brutal.
of those. Yeah, there's been plenty of those, man. Those are the best. I don't know that there is a show that necessarily sticks out in my mind well, actually, no, there definitely is one that sticks out. and it happens more recently than you would expect, and that's why it caught me off guard so much. I was playing at Monk's in Missoula, Montana this past year, and I played there, and I think that somebody was in town playing or something. I'm not making any excuses, but and also shout out to like the two fans that actually did show up, because I played a whole show just for them. But man, I mean, that place was like dead ass empty. There was the only people in there were like maybe 4 or 5 people that showed up. And then the crew, and I mean that was pretty much it. And then the other band, like most of the audience was the band that opened up for me to play solo.
That doesn't mean you that,
And
that
they
doesn't
were
mean you didn't
local guys.
perform well. That doesn't mean you didn't perform well, right? That just means nobody was there to confirm
No,
it.
but you know,
Nobody saw it.
I went into Alice in Chains Down on the Hole, and I don't know if I was like in my own head or something, but I got like halfway into that song and I was way off of where I needed to be on it, and I just stopped right in the middle of the song. I was like, "That's not going to happen tonight," and that's not something that I think I've ever done. Is stopped in the middle of a song. I think I've always at least tried to finish it, unless I forgot the word. But yeah, that was a tough one. That was a
We
tough one.
well, if it makes you feel better, we told the story a few times in the past, but before Whiskey Riff, I think was, but well before Whiskey Riff, it is what it is. But Chris Stapleton was performing at Joe's Bar in Chicago, which is like a pretty famous spot. A lot of people have come through there over the years before they got really big, and it's kind of like a warehouse style feel in the back, so you can fit a lot of people in there. But when there's not a lot of tickets, so they'll like leave out tables and like high tops, and
Put a
like
candle
people
on
kind of
it.
like put a candle. Yeah, it's all like cozy, and
Yeah.
but that's all they always take that out basically for any concert, because there's just too many people. And we saw Chris Stapleton there. I guess it probably been like 10 years ago then, Wes.
Yeah, probably.
And tables were left out, very few people just kind of like sitting there drinking beer on their cell phones, and you got
Wow.
Chris Stapleton up there performing. And then a few short years later, the whole Timberlake thing happened on the award show, and obviously he was great well before that, but it was just kind of a cool moment for us, looking back to see that. So that's going to happen, right? It's just kind of one of the parts of the journey, I guess. But
Yeah.
what I was going to ask you about growing up in Kentucky. Speaking of Kentucky, and something in the water there, of course, because so many great musicians have come from there. And what do you think it is? We've heard kind of various kind of takes on it, but seems to that just general area seems to pump out quite the talent.
I think it's a deeply rooted culture here. There's a storytelling aspect about this area of the country in general, and not just necessarily Eastern Kentucky, but just Appalachia as a whole. It's it's generationally pretty poor, and it has been for a long time. So I think that's forced people to find other means of entertainment and things like that. So therein lies storytelling and playing music and things like that, where you can't go out on the town or something like that. So people will get together and play music, stuff like that. And I wish that I could have grown up in a more musically rich culture than I did, because I think that a lot of people think that I grew up like in the very back of the deepest holler, and I might sound like it, but I really didn't. Like, I grew up on a subdivision in Boyd County, so it's really but that goes to show that it's a cultural thing. You don't have to be from up the holler to know the stories and have family that has a deep culture and things like that.
Can you explain what a holler is for people who might not know? Because I think there's a good portion of the country that's probably have heard that word, but they're like,
they sing it from some famous songs,
and they're like probably have no idea.
Well, I'd say you probably get different definitions from different people, but to me, a holler is the low ground between two ridge lines, and generally that would go, a holler's got to be pretty deep to actually be called a holler. You know what I mean? I would probably call it a cut if it wasn't very deep, but I'm sorry, my mother was getting a call and she's hooked up to my Bluetooth for some reason.
No, no worries.
Because I'm setting out my driveway right now. But yeah, I would just say that low ground between two ridge lines is what I would refer to as a holler.
Yeah, parked in a holler, the Alabama Dixieland Delight.
Yeah.
But that's the
Yeah.
one I always go to. Like,
Yeah. You would be amazed at the creativity of Eastern Kentuckians of just exactly how many single wide trailers they can fit up one single holler to. It's pretty impressive.
we did have a few fan questions when we posted that you were going to come on, and being that you're from Kentucky, do you have a favorite bourbon?
Well, I always say that I was a fan of Bullet bourbon before Yellowstone made it popular, but now you can't find it anywhere. I like Bullet a lot on the
I like
rocks. It's hard to go wrong with Woodford. Four Roses is good. I mean, really, it's all good.
It's kinda-
Great
Yeah.
answer.
What is your
Unless,
preference?
yeah, unless it's like
Plastic
seven,
bottle.
yeah, $15. I did see something crazy because this is like a weird segue, but there was like a story about some guy that like jumped off a building in New York, some finance guy, and it was like all over the news today. And but they kept talking about the bar because in New York people are tending to do this at this bar, which is kind of creepy. But it's like super high up in a Hyatt hotel, and I was just like, oh, I'm like, this place seems like it's fancy. I was just curious. I looked it up, and then they had like a spirits menu, and then like they had bourbon, of course, and like first of all, places like that typically don't have Jim Beam, but they had Jim Beam. And Jim Beam, a bottle is what, like $17 or something?
Yeah.
Like
one drink of Jim Beam there is $17. I was like, this is Manhattan, New York City. I'm like, it's Jim Beam.
Oh,
Come on. Jim Beam, you mix it, but drinking it straight's not the easiest once you have some good stuff. We have something here. I'm in Colorado called Stranahan's. And Wes, when Wes came out, we like toured the place. It's like a technically not bourbon, but smooth as hell. So if you ever come out here to Colorado, it'd be kind of fun to try some of the local stuff. But
yeah, man, I just got to actually go see the Jim Beam distillery when I played in Louisville, and we recorded a segment for WHAS 11 Great Day Live, which is like a morning program that they do. And we filmed that at this place called the Kitchen Table, which is a restaurant at the Jim Beam distillery. And they gave me some Knob Creek rye to take home with me. And that's actually pretty good. I've never really had much rye before, but I did like that stuff.
I'm 34 now, and I just started getting into rye. So you're a lot younger, but you're, and Wes can speak to this too, because we met in college. Your palate for booze is much more impressive than what we were when we were 22.
I was drinking Busch Light.
It was just 15 Busch Lights a piece, and go to the bar and get the cheapest shit they had.
Yeah. Well, I've always hung out with my papaw who smoked cigars and is a bourbon connoisseur. So, I had a knowledge of that stuff before I was ever partaking in it anyway.
Yeah. I mean, you're living in the Spofford, of course, but the whole bourbon thing with like, it's got to be from Kentucky, right? But then in Colorado, they'll say like Colorado bourbon. I'm kind of confused sometimes, but it's good stuff. But another question, like, what about a hangover cure? You probably don't have them that bad because you're young enough. Give it 5 more years and it's going to be a motherfucker. But what's a go-to for you?
Pedialyte has to be, or liquid IV.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
Both good.
the OG. I feel like we were, and we say this a lot, but I feel like we pushed Pedialyte single-handedly into
Over the edge.
steering in towards, because when we were talking to them years ago, we were like, come on, it's a great hangover cure. I think there's an opportunity for a partnership here. And
But
they're
like, no, we can't market it that way.
we're for
when we talk to
babies
them.
and kids,
Yeah.
you know, we don't do that. And then now all of a sudden they're like, oh, try it when you're hungover.
Now you go to your grocery store and by the liquor section, there's a Pedialyte display.
What's that about?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to fucking claim it, but and I gotta thank you. This is random, but went on your website and right there, smack dab, first picture quote you guys took from Whiskey Riff, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Yeah. Well, shit, y'all have been
Randall, yeah. No, go ahead.
ahead.
Sorry. No, I was gonna say Randall King from Texas. He put one of our quotes in his Instagram profile. I forgot that was your quote, right? Wes, right?
Yeah,
It was
country and cow shit thing. Yeah.
but so we always get a kick out of when people like do that. So appreciate that from you. And
Yeah,
your
man,
team.
absolutely. I appreciate y'all. You've been supporting my stuff since it came out. So I mean, that's the least I could do.
What do you got going on this year? New album coming out?
No, man. I don't. I can't really disclose a whole lot of what's going on, but
You can.
there's a lot going on. There's a lot of things going on, but not a whole lot that I'm gonna,
Keeping it
disclose
close.
at the moment. I will say probably unrealistic to expect a full length album this year. But there's I'm working on some things. So working on new material for sure.
Nice. Sweet, Matt. Well, before we let you go, we saw you were a fan of hunting, a fan of fishing and all that good stuff. And we're obviously huge fans of the outdoors here too. So we'll get in touch with you after, get your address, get you some of our Riff Outdoor stuff. I got the logo here.
Yeah, man. I'd love it.
We'll get you some stuff, and no pressure if you don't want to wear it on stage or anything, but if you do send a pic and we'll make sure to share it on socials and whatnot. But yeah, man, you're exciting artist, and we love talking to people like you for that reason only. And you're young, man. You got a whole lot ahead of you that we're excited about. So as soon as you get that news and you can tell us, we'll be sure to share it right away.
All right, man. I appreciate it. Thank y'all so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no problem, man. Cheers, buddy.
Yep. Y'all take care.